Hi everyone, today we'll be looking at something kind of small but can make a big difference in your workflow, and sometimes it's even necessary. And that's the USB-C UHS-II card reader from DriverGenius. Now, full disclosure, they did send it out to me for free in exchange for review, but as always, the opinions are my own and they haven't seen this video before I published it. So with that out of the way, let's get started. All right, let's take a look at the device itself. We have a 6-inch cable here going to a USB-C connector, which is a Gen 3.1, 5 gigabits compatible with both Windows and Mac. And this goes into a nice metal casing here all the way around with plastic here on the front and the back. And also on the top here, we have an LED light, which indicates that it's connected, and when it's transferring data, it'll blink. Now here on the back here, we have our actual card reader ports here. The top one here being for compact flash, which is CF1 compatible, not the newer CFast cards that some cameras are coming with now. And then here we have a standard SD card reader, which is UHS-II compatible, as well as a UHS-II compatible micro SD card slot. So as many of you know, whenever I do a product review, I always like to compare it against something I already own to see if it's really any better. So I'll be comparing the new device against my Kingston UHS-II card reader, which uses a USB 3.0 connection, which is also a 5 gigabit speed. And then I also have this generic USB card reader with a USB-C connection, which also claims to have a 5 gigabits speed over the USB connection. Now this one here is simply standard SD and micro SD UHS-II. And this card reader here has a standard SD and micro SD card reader, but these are only UHS-I. Also, it has a pass-through USB-A port here, which we're going to ignore. Now, as far as overall form factor goes, I much prefer the devices that have a dongle on them versus, say, this one solid piece, because a lot of times when I'm trying to plug this in directly to the laptop, the ports are so close together, I end up unplugging other devices just so I can read my SD card. With this will easily fit in between all of the ports with no problem. Now for the test here, I'll be using my own memory cards, and I happen to have a UHS-II 32 gigabyte SanDisk Extreme Pro, rated for 280 megabits read speed. So it's a little bit older one, but it still works well. And I can confirm it's UHS-II because we do have the double row of pins here versus, say, a standard UHS-I card, which only has one row. Also, I have a CF1 compact flash here, 16 gigabit, ready for 80X, whatever that means, from Lexar. And then finally, I have a SanDisk Extreme 256 gigabyte V30 card, which is rated for sustained data rates for doing 4K video. And again, this is a UHS-I card because we have a single row of pins here at the top, just like the standard SD card size. Now, if you're not familiar with the differences between a UHS-I card and a UHS-II card, basically that extra row of pins allow UHS-II compatible devices to read and write to the SD card twice as fast. To give you an example, typically you'll see UHS-I cards max out at about 100 megabits read and write, and UHS-II cards max out at around 300 megabits read and write. So really you're getting almost 3 times the speed by adding that extra row of pins. Now I have seen UHS-I cards have read speeds of like 170 megabits, but most of them are still limited to that 100 megabits write speed. Now one more thing I want to add is if you use a UHS-II card in a UHS-I device, sometimes you'll get worse performance than if you had just used a UHS-I card with the UHS-I device. That's not always the case, but that's something I've run into. But with that said, let's go ahead and see how this device performs compared to my other devices and with the different memory cards. So what I'm trying to do is simulate 3 different scenarios. One is, how long is it going to take to offload the images from the SD card onto my computer from a photo walk? The second scenario with the video files is how long does it take to transfer large files over? So if you're doing a video project, you may have several large files. And then finally, sometimes you use your SD cards to take pictures from one computer to another. So how long does it take to offload all those back onto the SD card so you can put those onto another computer? Now I've done all the testing and put it into the spreadsheet here. So let me just give you a quick outline before we get into the details. Basically, I have the 2 video files here that were 5.58 gig total. These are the 467 files, JPEG and RAW from my photo walk. And these are all the files going back to the SD card. And then over here, I indicate which device I was using. Now, I've also included the internal SD card reader built into my Dell G7 gaming laptop for comparison. And here's the new device, the DriverGenius UHS-II reader, and then my Kingston UHS-II reader, along with the generic card reader. Now, this first column here is for the UHS-I card. That's the slower card, and how many seconds it took to do each of those operations in each device. The second column here is for the UHS-II card in the UHS-II devices. I didn't bother testing it in the UHS-I slots because it was actually much slower. And then finally here I have how many megabits per second it actually transferred that data. So I just did the math and divided the seconds times the size of the files. And I came up with a megabits per second here. And this is for the UHS-I. This is for the UHS-II. And then finally, these last 2 columns just represents the number of minutes it took to perform that operation, so I could convey that information a little bit easier, so you have a better perception of how long these things actually took rather than just looking at number of seconds. Now here's a graphical representation of the data from the spreadsheet. And basically what we're looking at is the blue lines represent the UHS-I card in each device, and the red lines represent the UHS-II card. So starting with the 2 video files, 5.58 gig, you can see it took the generic card reader 315 seconds to offload those 2 video files, which is a little over 5 minutes. Now the Dell G7's built-in internal SD card reader in the laptop took 258 seconds, so just a little over 4 minutes to do that. So we saved about a minute by using the internal SD card reader in the laptop. And then next we have the new device here, the DriverGenius UHS-II card reader. And you can see it read the UHS-I card in 38 seconds to transfer those 2 video files. And if we transfer those video files from a UHS-II card, it took only 23 seconds. So we saved another 15 seconds. So it's a pretty substantial difference, right? Especially going from either the internal reader or the generic card reader to the new DriverGenius. But how does it compare against my Kingston UHS-II card reader? Well, it was actually still faster than that because the Kingston took 64 seconds to read the files off the UHS-I card versus it only took 38 seconds on the DriverGenius card reader. And then on the UHS-II card, it took 27 seconds for the Kingston to read those 2 video files, but it only took 23 seconds for the DriverGenius UHS-II card reader. So we saved just a mere 4 seconds, but still, it's faster, right? And then going to the 467 JPEG and RAW images, which are much smaller files, which generally take longer. And as you can see from this chart, it did 410 seconds to read these files off the generic card reader. 314 seconds to read it off the Dell's internal SD card reader. So we saved about a minute and a half there. And then going to the DriverGenius UHS-II card reader, it only took 83 seconds. So we saved a lot of time there. And then reading from a UHS-II card, you can see that it only took 40 seconds to read those 467 images off the SD card. Now the Kingston, still pretty fast, but not as fast as the DriverGenius. It took 100 seconds to read those 467 files versus the DriverGenius only took 83 seconds. And off the UHS-II card, it took 51 seconds, but it only took 40 seconds for the DriverGenius to read those off a UHS-II card. And then finally, the writing all of those files back to the SD card, like when you're transferring between computers. You can see that the generic card reader took 740 seconds, 48 seconds to read those write those all back to the SD card. The Dell internal reader took 478 seconds, so wow, almost 300 seconds faster, right? Or 5 minutes. And the DriverGenius UHS-II card reader, the new device, only took 182 seconds to write all of those files back to the SD card, so just 3 minutes. And then finally, if we were using UHS-II card, it took 125 seconds, or only 2 minutes, so we saved about a minute going to UHS-II. And then finally, the Kingston, still fast, but not as fast as the DriverGenius. 220 seconds versus 182 seconds on the UHS-I card. And then going to the UHS-II card, 128 seconds versus 125 seconds. So pretty much the same. So the Kingston reader did a good job working with multiple files, multiple small files, almost as good as the DriverGenius. So at the very least, you can see how much time you're going to save using a good dedicated external card reader versus, say, your laptop's internal SD card reader or even these cheap generic SD card readers. Because even the Dell's internal SD card reader, the laptop, took over 4 minutes to download just those 2 video files. And this did it in 38 seconds. And that was the UHS-I card. It was faster still with the UHS-II card. Now, earlier in the video, I mentioned that sometimes these devices are necessary, and that's because a lot of laptops don't even come with an SD card reader anymore. Like my Asus G14 that I just got, no SD card reader at all. And when I was shopping laptops, a lot of the laptops I was looking at, if it had an SD card reader, it was the micro SD card reader only. It wasn't even a full-size one. And of course, we know that if they do put a full-size SD card reader, they put the cheapest one they can in there, and it's very slow. So you may still want to get one of these anyway, right? Now, one last thing I want to mention is if you have some older cameras like I do that use these compact flash cards, it took 3 minutes to read 3.5 gig or 395 files from this card to the computer, and it took 4 minutes and 22 seconds to write all those files back to the compact flash card. I can easily recommend this card reader from DriverGenius because it's well made. I like the form factor with the dongle and the little LED light. It reads compact flash, SD, and micro SD, and it was certainly faster than my Kingston SD card reader and way faster than my generic SD card reader that I bought with my laptop. I think I paid like $12 for this. It's complete junk. But this one here, this one runs for about $25. And I'll have my affiliate links down below if you'd like to support the channel. But either way, I appreciate you guys watching. If you'd like to see more videos like this, consider subscribing, hit the like button. But either way, thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.